Violet Everett hit post on the review and immediately burst into laughter, slapping her hand over her mouth as her roommate Sophie looked up from her laptop. "What did you do?" Sophie asked, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I just left the most ridiculous review for that new restaurant downtown. You know, the one everyone has been raving about, Aurelius." Violet wiped tears from her eyes, still giggling. "I've never even been there, but I was so tired of seeing it all over my feed. Every food blogger in the city acting like it is the second coming of culinary excellence." Sophie got up and peered over Violet's shoulder at the screen. Her eyes widened as she raved. "Oh my God, Violet, this is insane." The review was indeed elaborate. Violet had written 3 detailed paragraphs describing a completely fictional dining experience at Aurelius, complaining about everything from the supposedly pretentious foam that tasted like disappointment, to the chair that felt like sitting on a tax audit, to the waiter who spoke in riddles like he was auditioning for a community theater production of Hamlet. She had given it 1 star and titled it "When Ambition Exceeds Ability, a Tragedy in 7 Courses." "It was just for us," Violet protested, closing her laptop. "I posted it in our private group chat. Nobody else can even see it." "You sure about that?" Sophie asked, her tone skeptical. Violet opened the laptop again, her smile fading as she looked at the screen. Her stomach dropped. Instead of posting to their private group of 5 college friends, she had posted it publicly on the restaurant's review page, the same page that had over 15,000 followers. No, 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 no. Violet frantically clicked through the settings. "How did I do that?" "You were probably logged into the wrong account," Sophie said, wincing. "Can you delete it?" Violet tried, but the review platform had a policy. Once posted, reviews remained visible for 24 hours before they could be removed by the user. They could be flagged and taken down by moderators, but that process could take days. "This is bad," Violet whispered. "What if someone actually believes this?" "Well, you better hope the owner has a sense of humor," Sophie said, patting her shoulder. "At least you did not use your real full name on that account." That was true. Her profile just said V. Everett with a tiny profile picture that barely showed her face. Still, Violet felt sick. She was a freelance graphic designer, not a food critic. She had no business posting fake reviews, even as a joke. It was irresponsible and mean-spirited, even if it had been an accident. She spent the rest of the evening anxiously checking the review. To her dismay, it started getting engagement. People were liking it, commenting on it, sharing it. Some people defended the restaurant, calling her a liar. Others said they had similar experiences. The whole thing was spiraling out of control. By the time Violet went to bed, the review had been shared on 3 different foodie Instagram accounts and had over 200 comments. She barely slept, tossing and turning, wondering if she should just deactivate her account entirely. The next morning, her phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, she would not answer, but given the circumstances, she picked up. "Hello, is this V. Everett?" The voice was male, deep, and controlled. There was something commanding about it, though he was not raising his voice at all. Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Carter Thorne. I own Aurelius." Violet's blood turned to ice. She sat up in bed so fast she got dizzy. "Oh God, listen, I can explain. I would appreciate that," he said, his tone still measured. "Because your review is currently the most viewed post about my restaurant, and I am trying to understand what exactly went wrong during your visit." Violet took a breath. There was no point in lying. "I was never there. The review was a joke. I meant to post it privately to my friends, but I accidentally posted it publicly. I am so sorry. I tried to delete it, but the platform would not let me for 24 hours. There was a long silence on the other end. Violet braced herself for anger, threats of legal action, anything. Instead, Carter Thorne laughed. It was not a polite chuckle or a sarcastic bark. It was a genuine, full laugh that lasted several seconds. When he finally spoke again, she could hear the smile in his voice. "A chair that feels like sitting on a tax audit," he repeated. "That is creative, I will give you that." "I really am sorry," Violet said again, relaxing slightly. "It was stupid and irresponsible. I was just tired of seeing everyone worship this place without ever having been there myself, and I thought it would be funny to write something over the top. I never meant for anyone else to see it." "Well, several thousand people have seen it now," Carter said. "And while I appreciate the apology, we have a problem. Your review is affecting my business. I have had 6 cancellations this morning alone." Violet's guilt intensified. "What can I do?" "I will delete it the second I am able to. I can post a retraction, explain it was all fake." "That might help," Carter said slowly. "But I have a better idea. Why do not you actually come to the restaurant? Have a real meal, write a real review. If you hate it, fine. At least it will be honest. And if you like it, maybe you can set the record straight." Violet blinked. "You want me to come to your restaurant after what I did?" "I want to salvage my reputation," Carter said bluntly. "And this seems like the best way to do it. Plus, I am curious about you. Someone who can write that creatively out of pure imagination might have some interesting observations when faced with the real thing." "I cannot afford Aurelius," Violet admitted. "I looked at the menu once. The entrees start at $60. It will be on the house," Carter said immediately. "Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I will have a table ready for you, and Everett, do not stand me up. You owe me this much." Before Violet could respond, he hung up. She sat in bed, staring at her phone in disbelief. She had just been invited to one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city by the owner himself. The billionaire owner, she remembered. She had read an article about Carter Thorne once. He was young for someone so successful, only 32, and had made his fortune in sustainable architecture before pivoting to the restaurant industry. Aurelius was his passion project, a place where he could combine his love of design with his appreciation for fine dining. Sophie knocked on her door. "Was that him?" "He wants me to come to the restaurant tomorrow night," Violet said, still processing, "for a free meal, so I can write a real review." Sophie's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? That is either really generous or really creepy." "I think it is a business decision," Violet said. "He wants to fix the damage I caused, which is fair." "Are you going to go?" Violet thought about it. She could refuse, but that seemed cowardly. She had created this mess. The least she could do was try to make it right. "Yeah," she said finally. "I am going." The next day dragged on forever. Violet tried to focus on her design work, but her mind kept wandering to the upcoming dinner. She had no idea what to wear. Aurelius was upscale, but she did not want to look like she was trying too hard. Eventually, she settled on a simple black dress that hit just above the knee and a pair of heels that she rarely wore but made her feel more confident. Sophie helped her with her makeup, keeping it natural but polished. "You look great," she assured Violet. "Just be yourself. Eat the food, be honest about it, and everything will be fine." "What if I hate it?" Violet asked nervously. "Then you hate it," Sophie said with a shrug. "He said you could be honest, although maybe do not compare anything to a tax audit this time." Violet laughed despite her nerves. She grabbed her purse and headed out, taking a rideshare downtown to the restaurant. Aurelius was located in a renovated historical building with huge windows and exposed brick. The interior glowed with warm light, and even from outside, Violet could see it was packed with diners. She took a breath and walked inside. The host, a polished woman in her 40s, greeted her immediately. "Violet Everett," she asked. Yes, that is me. Mr. Thorne is expecting you right this way. Violet followed her through the restaurant, acutely aware of the beautiful decor and the quiet murmur of conversation. Everything looked expensive and thoughtfully designed. They walked past the main dining area to a smaller, more intimate space in the back. There was only one table there, set for two, and standing beside it was Carter Thorne. He was taller than she expected, probably 6'3", with dark hair and sharp features. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone. There was an intensity to his gaze, a sharpness that made Violet feel like he was reading her even before she said a word. "Miss Everett," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting me," Violet replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm and warm. "And please call me Violet." "Violet," he repeated as if testing out the name. "Carter, have a seat." She sat down and he took the chair across from her. A server appeared immediately with water and bread. "So," Carter said, leaning back slightly, "tell me about yourself. What do you do when you are not writing scathing fake reviews?" Violet felt her cheeks heat. "I am a graphic designer, freelance, mostly branding and web design for small businesses." "Interesting. Do you enjoy it?" "Most of the time," Violet said honestly. "It can be unpredictable, which is stressful, but I like the creative freedom." Carter nodded. "I can understand that. I spent years working for other people before I started my own firm. There is nothing quite like building something from the ground up." "Is that what Aurelius is for you?" Violet asked, feeling herself relax slightly. "Building something from the ground up. Exactly," Carter said, and she could see the passion in his eyes. "I wanted to create a space that felt both elevated and welcoming. Somewhere people could celebrate special moments but also feel comfortable. The food is important, obviously, but so is the atmosphere, the service, the entire experience." Violet looked around. "It is beautiful. Thank you." He paused as the server returned with the first course, a delicate appetizer that looked almost too pretty to eat. "This is our amuse-bouche. Seared scallop with a citrus foam and microgreens." Violet picked up her fork, feeling Carter's eyes on her as she took a bite. The flavors were incredible, bright and fresh with a perfect balance of textures. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring it. "Well," Carter asked. "It definitely does not taste like disappointment," Violet admitted with a smile. He laughed, and she noticed how it transformed his face. He went from intimidating to approachable in an instant. "I am glad to hear it." The meal continued, course after course, each one more impressive than the last. There was a roasted beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts, a perfectly cooked steak with a red wine reduction, and a chocolate soufflé that was so good Violet actually moaned when she tasted it. Throughout it all, they talked. Carter asked her about her childhood, her family, her dreams. She told him about growing up in a small town upstate, moving to the city for college, and deciding to stay because she loved the energy and the opportunities. He told her about his own background, how he had grown up in the city but spent every summer at his grandmother's house in the countryside, where she taught him to cook. "She is the reason I started this place," Carter said, his expression softening. "She passed away 3 years ago, and I realized I wanted to create something that honored her. She always said food was love made visible." Violet felt a lump in her throat. "That is beautiful." "She was beautiful," Carter said simply. "Inside and out." By the time dessert was finished, Violet realized she had been there for over 3 hours. It did not feel like it. The conversation had flowed so easily, and Carter was nothing like she had expected. She had imagined someone arrogant or cold, but he was thoughtful and engaging with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. "So," Carter said as the server cleared their plates, "what is the verdict? Are you going to write a real review? Violet smiled. I think I have to. And it is going to be a lot different from the first one. I hope so, Carter said. Although I have to admit the first one was entertaining, you have a way with words. Thank you, Violet said, feeling pleased. I will post the new review tomorrow. And I will make it clear that I lied the first time. Hopefully that helps. I am sure it will, Carter said. He hesitated, then added, I enjoyed tonight, more than I expected to, honestly. Me too, Violet admitted. Would you want to do this again? Carter asked. Not here necessarily. But maybe dinner somewhere else. Somewhere less formal. Violet's heart skipped. Are you asking me on a date? I am, Carter said, holding her gaze. If that is all right. She thought about saying no. This was complicated. He was a billionaire and she was barely making rent most months. But there was something about him, something that made her want to say yes. It is all right, Violet said softly. I would like that. Carter's smile was genuine and warm. Good, give me your number and I will call you. She did, and as they stood to leave, Violet realized she was not nervous anymore. She was excited. The next morning, Violet posted her real review. She explained the entire situation, apologizing for the fake review and detailing her actual experience at Aurelius. She praised everything from the food to the service to the ambience, and she ended with a sincere recommendation that people give it a try. The response was immediate. People loved the honesty and the story behind it. Within hours, Aurelius was trending again, but this time for all the right reasons. Carter texted her mid-morning, Thank you. Reservations are pouring in, I owe you. We are even, she texted back. Not quite. I still owe you a second date. How is Friday? Violet grinned at her phone. Friday works. Friday came quickly. Carter picked her up at her apartment, which surprised her. She had assumed they would meet somewhere, but he showed up at 7 on the dot, looking more casual than he had at the restaurant. He wore jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes stand out. You look great, he said when she opened the door. So do you, Violet replied, grabbing her jacket. He took her to a small Italian place in Brooklyn, the kind of neighborhood spot where everyone seemed to know each other. The food was simple but delicious, and the atmosphere was cozy and unpretentious. This is one of my favorite places, Carter admitted as they shared a margarita pizza. I come here when I need to remember why I fell in love with food in the first place. It is perfect, Violet said. Thank you for bringing me. They talked more that night, diving deeper into topics they had only touched on before. Carter told her about the pressure of running a business, the long hours and constant stress. Violet shared her own struggles with freelancing, the feast or famine cycle of projects and income. Do you ever think about doing something else? Carter asked. Sometimes, Violet admitted. But I do not know what. Design is what I am good at, what I love. Then you should keep doing it, Carter said firmly. Do not let the hard parts make you forget why you started. She appreciated that. There was no condescension in his tone, no suggestion that he could fix her problems with his money. He just listened and offered support, which felt rare and valuable. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the water. It was cold, and Carter offered her his jacket without hesitation. Violet pulled it around herself, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne. Can I ask you something? Violet said after a while. Anything. Why did you really invite me to the restaurant that first night? You could have just threatened to sue me or reported the review. Why give me a chance? Carter was quiet for a moment, thinking. Honestly, I was intrigued. Your review was mean, but it was also creative and funny. I figured anyone who could write like that was worth meeting, and I was right. Violet felt warmth spread through her chest. I am glad I accidentally posted it then. Carter stopped walking and turned to face her. Me too. He kissed her then, soft and tentative, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but Violet did not want to. She leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his neck as the kiss deepened. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I have been wanting to do that all night," Carter admitted. "Me too," Violet said. They started seeing each other regularly after that. Carter was busy with the restaurant, and Violet had her own projects, but they made time for each other. Coffee dates before work, late dinners after the restaurant closed, lazy Sunday mornings in Carter's penthouse apartment. Violet had been nervous the first time she saw his place. It was enormous and beautifully decorated, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. But Carter had a way of making her feel comfortable, never flaunting his wealth or making her feel less than. "This is just a place," he said when she commented on it. "It does not define me." "What does define you?" Violet asked. Carter thought about it. "My work. My relationships, how I treat people, that is what matters." Violet fell a little more in love with him in that moment. Their relationship was not without challenges. There were times when Carter's demanding schedule meant canceled plans or late-night texts instead of actual conversations. There were moments when Violet felt insecure about the differences in their lifestyles, especially when she met some of his friends and colleagues who seemed to come from a completely different world. But they worked through it. Carter was patient and reassuring, always making it clear that he valued her and wanted her in his life. And Violet learned to communicate her needs and set boundaries, something she had always struggled with before. 3 months into their relationship, Carter invited her to a charity gala. It was a big event, black tie, attended by some of the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. Violet was terrified. "I do not know if I belong there," she told Sophie as they went shopping for a dress. "You belong anywhere Carter wants you," Sophie said firmly. "And he clearly wants you there." Violet ended up finding a stunning emerald green dress that made her feel elegant and confident. When Carter picked her up the night of the gala, the look on his face made every bit of nervousness worth it. "You are breathtaking," he said, kissing her cheek. "You are not so bad yourself," Violet replied, taking in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. The gala was overwhelming at first. There were hundreds of people, all dressed to the nines, mingling and networking. But Carter never left her side. He introduced her to people as his girlfriend, a title that made her heart race every time. And when she felt out of her depth, he would lean in and whisper something funny or reassuring, grounding her. They danced that night, swaying together in the middle of the crowded ballroom. Violet rested her head on Carter's chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her cheek. "Thank you for being here with me," Carter murmured. "Thank you for inviting me," Violet replied. As the months went on, their relationship deepened. They said, "I love you" for the first time on a rainy Tuesday night, curled up on Carter's couch watching old movies. It was not dramatic or planned. It just slipped out, natural and true. "I love you," Carter said during a quiet moment, his hand stroking her hair. Violet looked up at him, her heart full. "I love you too." They started talking about the future. Carter wanted to open another restaurant, maybe something more casual and accessible. Violet had been thinking about starting her own design agency, something small but stable. They dreamed together, making plans and setting goals. But there were still obstacles. Carter's business partner, a man named Greg, was not Violet's biggest fan. He thought she was a distraction, that Carter was losing focus because of her. And there were moments when the demands of Carter's work made Violet feel like she was competing for his attention. One night, after Carter had to cancel their dinner plans for the 3rd time in a week, Violet finally spoke up. "I need to know this is real for you," she said when he called to apologize. Because it feels like I am always coming second to the restaurant. Carter was quiet for a long moment. You are right, he said finally. I have been so focused on making Aurelia successful that I have not been fair to you, and that is not okay. I am sorry, Violet. You are not second to anything. You are the most important thing in my life. Then prove it, Violet said, her voice breaking slightly. I will, Carter promised. Starting now. He showed up at her apartment an hour later with takeout and flowers, and they spent the rest of the night talking. Really talking about their fears and insecurities, about what they needed from each other. It was hard and emotional, but it brought them closer. After that, Carter made changes. He hired an additional manager at the restaurant to lighten his load, and he started setting boundaries with his work. He made sure to prioritize time with Violet, even if it was just a quiet evening at home. Violet did the same, working on her own insecurities and learning to trust that Carter's love for her was real and lasting. A year into their relationship, Carter took Violet back to Aurelius. It was a quiet Tuesday night, and the restaurant was closed to the public. Violet was confused when they arrived and found the place empty except for a single table set up in the middle of the dining room. "What is this?" she asked. "This is where it all started," Carter said, leading her to the table. "Where you walked in terrified and I fell a little bit in love with you." Violet's breath caught. "Carter." He got down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light. "Violet, you came into my life in the most unexpected way, and you have made it better in every possible sense. You challenge me, you make me laugh, you make me want to be a better man. I do not want to spend another day without you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Violet's face as she nodded. "Yes. Yes, of course." Carter slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like a promise. When they finally broke apart, Violet was laughing and crying at the same time. "I cannot believe this is real," she whispered. "It is real," Carter said, cupping her face in his hands. "You and me. This is as real as it gets." They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Carter's grandmother's old house, the one where he had learned to cook. It was intimate and beautiful, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Violet wore a simple white dress, and Carter could not stop smiling the entire day. During his vows, Carter mentioned the review that had brought them together, and everyone laughed. "I never thought a 1-star review would lead me to the love of my life," he said. "But I am grateful every single day that you accidentally hit post." Violet's vows were just as heartfelt. "You took a chance on me when you had every reason not to," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You saw past the mistake and gave me an opportunity to make it right. And in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift of my life. You." After the wedding, they honeymooned in Italy, eating their way through Tuscany and falling even more in love with each passing day. When they returned, they moved into a new apartment together, something that felt like theirs rather than just his. Violet finally launched her design agency, with Carter's support and encouragement. It was small at first, just her and one other designer, but it grew steadily. She loved having more control over her projects and clients, and the financial stability was a relief. Carter opened his second restaurant, a casual bistro that focused on comfort food with a gourmet twist. It was an instant hit, and Violet designed all the branding for it, which felt like a perfect collaboration. 2 years into their marriage, Violet found out she was pregnant. She told Carter over breakfast one Saturday morning, sliding the positive test across the table with shaking hands. Carter stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "Are you serious?" "I am serious," Violet said, her own tears starting to fall. He was out of his chair in an instant, pulling her into his arms and holding her tight. "We are having a baby," he whispered, his voice full of awe. "We are having a baby," Violet confirmed. Their daughter, Grace, was born on a warm spring morning. She had Carter's dark hair and Violet's bright eyes, and she was perfect in every way. Carter was a devoted father, taking paternity leave and spending every possible moment with his new family. Violet watched him one night as he rocked Grace to sleep, singing softly to her. Her heart swelled with love for this man who had come into her life in the strangest way and become everything she had ever wanted. "What are you thinking about?" Carter asked, noticing her watching. "How lucky I am," Violet said honestly. "How lucky we are." Carter smiled, leaning over to kiss her. The luckiest. As Grace grew, so did their family. They had a son 2 years later, a wild, energetic boy named Leo who kept them on their toes. Their life was full and messy and beautiful, a constant juggling act of work and parenting and maintaining their relationship. But they made it work. Carter continued to build his restaurant empire, eventually expanding to 3 locations, while Violet's design agency became one of the most sought after in the city. They supported each other through every challenge and celebrated every victory together. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Carter surprised Violet with a framed copy of her original fake review, the one that had started it all. "I never want to forget how we met," he said as she laughed and cried at the same time. "Even if it was a disaster." "The best disaster of my life," Violet agreed. They hung it in their home office, a reminder that sometimes the biggest mistakes can lead to the greatest blessings. And every time Violet looked at it, she felt grateful for that moment of carelessness, that accidental post that had changed everything, because it had led her to Carter, to love, to a family and a life she had never imagined but could not live without. Years later, when Grace was old enough to understand, she asked her parents how they met. Carter and Violet exchanged a glance, then launched into the story, embellishing and laughing as they recounted the details. "So you lied about Daddy's restaurant?" Grace asked, her eyes wide. "I did," Violet admitted, "and it was wrong, but your dad gave me a second chance, and I am so glad he did." "Me too," Grace said seriously. "Otherwise I would not be here." "Exactly," Carter said, ruffling her hair. "So sometimes good things come from mistakes, as long as you own up to them and make them right." It was a lesson they instilled in both their children, teaching them about honesty and integrity and the importance of second chances. And as Violet watched her family grow and thrive, she knew that everything had worked out exactly as it was meant to. On quiet nights when the kids were asleep and she and Carter were alone, they would sit together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not called me that day?" Violet asked once. "Never," Carter said firmly, "because I did call you, and you said yes to dinner, and here we are." "Here we are," Violet echoed, smiling. Their love story was unconventional, born from a joke gone wrong, and a phone call that could have been angry but turned out to be the beginning of everything. But it was theirs, and it was real, and it was more than either of them had ever hoped for. Carter built his business into something even more successful, always crediting Violet as his inspiration and support. Violet's agency flourished, eventually hiring a team of 10 designers and taking on major corporate clients. But no matter how busy they got, they always made time for each other and for their family. They took vacations together, exploring new places and making memories. They had date nights, keeping the romance alive even as life got hectic. They fought sometimes, because no relationship is perfect, but they always worked through it with communication and love. When Grace turned 10, She asked if she could have her birthday party at Aurelius. Carter laughed and agreed, and Violet watched as their daughter celebrated with her friends in the same place where her parents' love story had truly begun. "This is where you fell in love," Grace said to her mom during a quiet moment. "This is where I realized I could fall in love with him," Violet corrected. "But I fell in love with your dad over time, with every conversation and every moment we spent together." "That is romantic," Grace said with a sigh. "It is," Violet agreed, watching Carter across the room as he chatted with the kids. He caught her eye and winked, and she felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt on their first date. Some things never changed. As the years continued to pass, Violet and Carter grew older together, their love deepening with each passing day. They faced challenges, as all couples do, health scares and business setbacks and the normal struggles of raising children. But they faced them together, side by side, never wavering in their commitment to each other. When Grace graduated high school and prepared to leave for college, Violet felt emotional. Her baby was growing up. But Carter held her hand through it all, reminding her that they had raised strong, capable children who were ready to take on the world. Leo followed a few years later, choosing a culinary school and declaring his intention to become a chef like his dad. Carter was proud beyond words, though he made sure Leo knew he supported him no matter what path he chose. And through it all, Violet and Carter remained each other's greatest love and biggest supporter. They celebrated their 10th anniversary, then their 15th, then their 20th. Each milestone was a testament to the strength of their bond and the depth of their love. On their 25th anniversary, Carter took Violet back to Aurelius once again. The restaurant had changed over the years, updated and renovated, but it still held the same warmth and elegance that had defined it from the beginning. They sat at the same table where he had proposed, holding hands across the white tablecloth. 25 years, Carter said, shaking his head in wonder. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "I know what you mean," Violet said. "I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "You will never have to," Carter promised. "I am yours, Violet, for as long as we both live." "And I am yours," Violet replied. They raised their glasses in a toast to love and partnership and the beautiful, messy, wonderful life they had built together. And as Violet looked at her husband, this man who had taken a chance on her all those years ago, she felt nothing but gratitude and joy. Their story had started with a mistake, a careless moment that could have led to nothing but trouble. But instead, it had led to everything. To love, to family, to a lifetime of happiness, and Violet would not change a single thing. As they left the restaurant that night, walking hand in hand into the cool evening air, Violet thought about the review that had brought them together. The fake, ridiculous review that had somehow been the catalyst for the greatest love story she could have imagined. She had written that the food tasted like disappointment, but the truth was that nothing in her life with Carter had ever disappointed her. Every day with him was a gift, every moment a treasure. And as they climbed into the car and drove home, back to the life they had built together, Violet knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without its struggles, but full of love and laughter and the kind of deep connection that only comes from truly knowing and being known by another person. Carter reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Violet squeezed back, feeling the weight of his wedding ring against her skin. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," Carter replied. "Always." And that was the truth that defined their entire relationship. Always. Through every high and low, every challenge and triumph, they loved each other. Completely, unconditionally, forever. It was the kind of love that romance novels were written about, the kind that people dreamed of finding. And Violet had found it in the most unexpected way, with the most extraordinary man. She had written a scathing review of a billionaire's restaurant as a joke, and he had read it and called her. And from that one phone call, from that one moment of connection, had come a lifetime of love. It was improbable and perfect, and exactly the way their story was meant to unfold. When they arrived home, Grace and Leo were both there, having come for the anniversary dinner Violet had planned for the next day. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, exactly the way Violet had always dreamed it would be. Carter pulled her aside for a moment, away from the chaos of their adult children catching up and teasing each other. "Thank you," he said, his voice serious. "For what?" Violet asked. "For saying yes to that first dinner, for giving me a chance, for building this life with me." Carter cupped her face in his hands. "For everything." Violet felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you for calling me, for seeing past the mistake and giving me a second chance, for loving me the way you do." They kissed, a sweet, tender kiss that held 25 years of love and commitment, and when they pulled apart they were both smiling. "Come on," Carter said, taking her hand. "Our kids are waiting." They walked back into the living room together, and Violet looked around at her family. At Grace, beautiful and confident and kind. At Leo, passionate and creative and full of life. At Carter, her partner and her love and her best friend, this was her happily ever after. Not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but full of joy. Not what she had planned, but so much better than anything she could have imagined. And it had all started with a fake review and a phone call. A billionaire who had seen potential in her instead of just a problem. A man who had taken a risk on a stranger and ended up with his soulmate. Violet would never stop being grateful for that twist of fate, that moment of carelessness that had led to a lifetime of love. Because sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes a mistake is not really a mistake at all, but the first step on a journey to something extraordinary. She had found that with Carter, and she would cherish it for the rest of her life. That night, as she and Carter got ready for bed, Violet paused to look at the framed review hanging on their office wall. She read through it again, remembering the panic she had felt when she realized what she had done. "You really not regret keeping that?" she asked Carter, who was brushing his teeth in the adjoining bathroom. He came out, wiping his mouth with a towel. "Are you kidding? It is my favorite thing we own. Well, besides the kids and you," Violet laughed. "It is pretty ridiculous." "It is perfect," Carter corrected. "Just like you. Just like us." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there together, looking at the review that had changed both of their lives. "I am glad you have a sense of humor," Violet said. "I am glad you have terrible aim when posting reviews," Carter replied, making her laugh again. They went to bed that night the same way they had every night for 25 years, wrapped in each other's arms, grateful for the love they shared and the life they had built. And somewhere in the universe, fate smiled at the unlikely love story it had created. A story born from chaos and humor and a willingness to take chances. A story that proved love could come from anywhere, even from a one-star review and an angry phone call. But most importantly, it was a story that proved true love, once found, could withstand anything. It could grow and evolve and deepen with time. It could create a family and a legacy and a lifetime of beautiful memories. Violet and Carter had found that love, nurtured it, and built something extraordinary with it. And as they drifted off to sleep that night, safe in each other's arms, they both knew that their story was far from over. There were still more chapters to write, more memories to make, more love to share. Grandchildren to spoil, new adventures to take, quiet moments to savor. But no matter what came next, they would face it together. Hand in hand, heart to heart, forever and always, because that was what true love meant. And Violet and Carter had found the truest love of all, the end.